All right, guys. Um, I want to talk about high school.
Mm,
What was that like? What was loneliness like for you in high school?
I never knew loneliness. I was
Really?
the most popular one.
That's a good one.
Um, don't even believe me. No, so I was one of those people where I would bounce around from the band kids and the track kids. Didn't really like the volleyball girls. Theater kids. That didn't last long. I was like, this is not my crowd. Yeah, but I know you guys were kind of into theater, so
Yeah, well, just for a couple years. But
okay.
I wouldn't say I was a popular kid, but I had my friends.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, in Italy, where I'm from, we have the same classmates for
Oh
5 years.
yeah.
So I really, really became close with
Like
them.
the same 20 kids for 5 years in a row?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think my class had 22 students the first year, and then I think the last year was maybe 19. But so
Wow.
I was very, very close with
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. For
Wow.
better or for worse.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
real, yeah.
hmm
Interesting.
I think for me, well, high school was a really awful time. I had definitely experienced loneliness, and it was I grew up with the same kids, like the same group of friends from kindergarten to 8th grade. We
Mm.
were in at the same school, and then there was two high schools in the area, and so once we went to high school, half of them went to the other one and I went to the
Oh,
first one.
yeah.
And so even though I had friends at the one I was going to, everybody started doing different things and I wasn't ready for that shift. And
Yeah.
so I just experienced a
Like
ton of loneliness.
being
And it
left
was
behind.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
but it wasn't like purposefully, like they didn't purposely
Yeah.
leave me
Right.
behind, but I didn't go along. You know what I
That
mean?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of what happened to my sister. So there's that what do they called it running start in my
Oh.
state or like in my community. It was where you would go and take college classes in your high school career.
Oh, so like AP
Yeah,
classes.
but at a college.
Oh, okay.
And so there was this community college that we would go to, and I remember my sister, a ton of her friends did that. And so she was left behind at the
Oh.
high school while all the other kids were over at the college. And she was like I don't see these people anymore. Like what happened? So that's interesting. That's interesting how that happens.
Yeah,
It's
Mm.
hard.
and it's a hard time for high school students because there's so many different changes
Yeah.
in your life.
Yeah.
You know, friends are changing, like we just
Yeah.
said,
Yeah.
but you're like your body's changing, like you're
Yeah.
learning different things. Family relationships are different.
Yeah.
It's just a difficult time for high school students, and so to lose your
Mm.
friends during that time just makes it even worse, if that makes
Yeah.
Absolutely.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But why do you think that was the case? Like the moments of loneliness that you experienced in high school?
I I think for me it was hardest when I was hearing that other people were doing things and that I wasn't invited.
Mm.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, that's the big one.
I found out like my generation, my like there were a few people in my church community who were all graduating high school at the same time, and they went and off and did something, and I wasn't there, and I was
Mm.
like, oh, I know all of you guys. Like,
Mhm.
why wouldn't you invite me? That kind of just made me think like, do I not have something worthwhile to offer? Like, what's going on with that? You know, why would they choose to um what's the word? Leave me behind or leave me
Yeah.
out. Yeah. I
Mhm.
don't know.
I how'd you hear about like their events? You know what I mean? Because
How
when
did
that
I?
happened to me, it was always through like social media, through Snapchat
Oh
or
Oh,
yeah.
someone's
wow.
story on Instagram or whatever it was, and it was like, oh, like, and I would see it after the
Yeah.
fact,
FOMO.
and so yeah,
Straight up.
it's like,
Yeah.
oh, no one told me, but
Yeah, that happened a little bit. I think honestly, as a kid, I knew that if I spent too much time on social media seeing what other people would do,
Yeah.
I was going to be affected by it. And so I got my algorithm to be mostly just like memes, and I used it as humor. Like I wanted to see something cool. I wanted to see something funny. I wanted like recipes, I wanted to enjoy my time on social media. So I feel like I could have seen that happening more. I didn't follow people just because they were famous or like popular at school. I was very choosy about who I was following because I did it just for myself. So that's how I personally avoided that. But I mean, yeah, there were a few times where I'd see like, oh, okay, I know all those people, but I'm not there. Like I'm not quite in that circle of friends. So yeah, I did experience that sometimes. Yeah.
I definitely felt the same way. But I would say maybe in middle school, I felt that more than high school.
You had social
Just
media in middle
I
school?
can't remember. I think the last year I had
Okay.
maybe Facebook. I started with Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Gateway drug.
Yeah. But again, high school I had my friends. For me though, I even though I had my, circle of friends, I think I fell alone when I realized that my beliefs and my views were not the same as my classmates, and the things I did, the kind of party I attended, or I don't know, the kind of music I listened to was very different than my classmates. Sometimes I fell alone, but I would say I was blessed with a lot of good friends because they respected me.
That's
And
good.
that changed my whole experience in high school, especially the first couple years. I feel I felt alone maybe like the first 3 years of high school, but then by the fourth and the fifth, they knew me,
Wow.
And that probably changed your whole experience in high school,
Yeah,
having those
absolutely.
relationships.
Yeah.
And that's what this podcast is all about. This is the Head Over Feels podcast. Today, we're talking about relationships, why they matter, and do people really value them anymore in today's society. I'm Savannah.
I'm Callie.
I'm Erica.
We are college students, and we are doing this podcast to show everyone the resources that we love most that promote healthy and happy relationships. And that's not just limited to romantic relationships. As we've already discussed, every type of relationship has value to offer to your life and to others' lives as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we're just a group of friends here in college. We
Yep.
met I guess it's not a year, but like 9 months ago
Yeah.
or so,
Yeah.
back
Well,
in September
I met
2023.
I met
Oh.
Callie 2022 though,
Yes,
and then I met
yeah,
you
yeah,
2023. So
Okay,
Yeah.
so they had a class before a
Mhm.
couple years ago, but I met them last year, and we all became friends
Yeah.
because we're really passionate about
Yeah.
relationships and
Yeah.
positive, healthy living in that way.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So I actually wanted to do some research on the topic of how lonely people feel. We've been talking about how teenagers are lonely, but unfortunately, there's a lot more people than just teenagers who are lonely right now. And so this group Cigna, which happens to be my insurance group, but,
That's
Is
funny.
it the same?
I think so.
That's funny.
It's a weird spelling, but yeah, if you guys want to look more into what that research is, we'll have that on the research tab of our website. So that'll give you your own opportunity to look into it for yourselves. But here are some of the stats that they found. They said young adults are twice as likely to be lonely than seniors, and 79% of adults aged 18 to 24 report feeling lonely, compared to 41% of seniors age 66 and older, blah, blah, blah. So pretty much older people are at this point more or less lonely than people our age, which I think, I don't know, I feel like that's backwards. Like I'm glad that old people aren't lonely, but I'm just thinking like that's when your life has kind of slowed down a ton. Like you're probably, living in like an old folks home at that point.
Yeah.
Like it's just like, wow, okay, that's kind of sad. Like most of the time we envision the 20s being the really lively and active part of someone's life.
Yeah.
It's where you're going to parties, or you don't have to get crazy with it, but just you're usually really social, and so I think that's weird that 79% of adults
That's a
report
lot.
feeling lonely. That's a lot. Um, yeah. They also had another one that I thought was interesting. More than twice as many younger adults as older adults experience feeling left out. More than 2 in 5 adults, so that's 42%, aged 18 to 34 report always feeling left out, compared to
Wow.
just 16% of people aged 55 or older who say the same. So, specifically that 18 to 24 or 18 to 34 age range, 42%, almost half are feeling left out all the time. Again, I don't, that's crazy. That's
Yeah.
so sad.
It is. And I think one of the big reason why, younger adults feel alone is, I think, because of technology.
Mm.
Because probably, my grandma doesn't have, TikTok,
No.
Instagram, or Facebook. She has just WhatsApp to text with me. But I think our generation really struggle with technology and this feeling of, oh man, I'm left behind.
Yeah.
And it was interesting that you mentioned that the stats, because there was a study made in the United Kingdom, and they actually asked 15 million internet users how they felt after they stopped using technology for a couple of days.
Mm.
And they reported that 16% had a strong fear missing out.
Mm.
60% of 15 million, that's like a big
Yeah.
number.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like, we don't realize how, our generation is affected by this FOMO. And I think it's really, really impacting our mental health.
Mhm.
And I feel during COVID, the pandemic was a great, sadly, example of how social media can really impact our mental health.
Yeah.
I feel the depression rate after COVID, the research is pretty clear. It just went up. Just to
Mhm.
read some numbers, there was a study that reported the depression rate raised from 14% to 48% after COVID.
Mm.
Anxiety from 7%, this is crazy, from 7% to 47%.
Oh, wow.
That's a huge,
Shoot.
change. So I think we need to be careful, when we use social media and when we use technology, because nowadays it's really hard to stay connected with people. And I don't want to say that technology is all bad. I think it's has been a huge help, at least for me. My family's away, our families are away, and I think it helps me to connect with them,
Yes.
to talk with them every day. So I don't think technology is all bad, but I think it becomes bad when we use it to replace relationships. And
Mhm.
pretty much that's,
Mhm.
our podcast helping people to build relation, understand why relationships in person, face to face, when
Yes.
it's possible, are vital for
Yeah.
our mental health, for our
Mhm.
progress, and just for our happiness.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I actually had to do a technical report for one of my classes, and I was a little bit scared because
Hmm.
we were given all these stats, and it was like, okay,
Yeah.
now write a report. And I was like, okay, I'm used to reading these, not writing these. And it was interesting because it was about specifically technology use and how that impacts students. And what I wrote in my paper was that it depended on your use of the technology, not that the overall use was bad.
Right.
I
Yeah,
noticed that
I agree.
the students who were using technology to text, to see other people, to connect with other people,
Yeah.
oftentimes had, I think they, I don't know how they got it, but they had some stats about the feelings, like anxiousness or how lonely the students were feeling. And I noticed that the students who were most lonely were the ones using technology in ways that didn't have interpersonal communication.
Yep.
So I think it's good that you say that social media or even technology in general is not this like it's bad. All of it's bad. There is a lot of good that comes with it, but
Mhm.
unfortunately, it's kind of led us into this me perspective. I'm only going to
Yeah.
focus on myself. We're all trying to make ourselves look better online. It's kind of all just a facade, but
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I do want to touch on that, but on like the individualism aspect. But before we get to that, kind of going along with your point, I think another way that technology contributes to loneliness is the overconsumption.
Mm.
There,
Absolutely.
people would rather obviously I can't say everybody, but
Yeah.
like teenagers, people
Mhm.
in this day and age would rather spend time on their phone and the internet friends or the faces that they've never met on
Yeah.
there than spending time face to face with other people.
Mm-hmm.
Or they'll spend time just scrolling mindlessly videos of people that they will never met, have never talked to.
Yeah.
And again, I can't say that I'm perfect. I
Yeah.
do scroll. I do go on Instagram. I
Yep.
love a good
Yep.
reel, you know.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
once in a while.
Yeah,
You're
but
always sending us reels. But even that, I think that's even different. When you're sending, when you're sending your friends reels and stuff, you are connecting a little bit there. Like, I
True.
feel like that's actually, that's better because you're using it to be social. You're using social media to be social.
right,
You know?
but yes, to a point, I think, because if I'm sending you one reel, how many reels am I scrolling through
That's
before
true.
I send you a reel?
Like
You know
one
what I
out of
mean?
10.
I'm not sending you every single one.
Yeah, and honestly, if it starts a conversation, that's great. But a lot of the time, it's just like, oh, haha, that was funny, and so it's
Right.
like, yeah,
Like this reminded me of you.
yeah,
Yeah.
like that's nice, but yeah,
No, but I agree with your point, Savannah, because I realized that sometimes I could be on the same couch as my husband. We're next to each
Mhm,
other and we
mhm.
send each other reels.
Yep.
So I'm like,
we do.
why, like, why am I sending him reels
Yeah.
instead of like talking to him? He's next
Yeah.
to me. And I've seen how that really, really impacts our relationship and the way we spend time together. So I think, like what you're saying, if we use this, if we use social media, we use technology to replace the real connection, then we're missing the point. But if we're
Mhm.
using, like you, Kali, said, to connect with people, maybe friends that are away from us, I think that's a
Yeah.
great, great way to connect with
Yeah.
friends.
I think the problem is instead of allowing social media to supplement our social
Yeah.
our social behaviors, it's replaced them.
Mm-hmm.
That I think is the problem.
Yeah.
Is imagine how much better our relationships would be if we saw people face to face. We went on little, hangouts or, dates or whatever, just take a walk in the park or something, just something like that, like just how we used to do. And then we could also text people. We could also share
Mm.
reels with them. We could also do all these things, but the problem is we've forgotten the walk in the park.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We've replaced that with just the reels. And that
Right.
they don't do the same thing.
Right. And I think
I agree.
with that mindless scrolling that we do,
Mm-hmm.
we kind of become subjected to opinions of and I say opinions, that I mean that word, opinions of people who are very persuasive but aren't necessarily correct.
Absolutely.
And
Like us.
no, we have research. No. but you get what I mean.
Yeah.
Someone on a TikTok could say something and thousands of people will believe it.
Mhm,
And
yeah.
I think this part is just my opinion, but I feel like that has contributed to the individualism that we experience in the world today.
Mm.
There is importance to like an aspect of individualism. We need to be able to take care of ourselves and stand up for ourselves against people that aren't protecting us, or people that are trying to hurt us.
Yeah.
But I fear that some of that has gone too far.
Oh, yeah.
And so there was a point, or there was a snippet of an article I wanted to share with you guys. It said, a focused attention on personal achievements can bear a significant cost to interpersonal relationships. So if
Ooh.
I'm so focused on me, I can lose out on like meaningful and important relationships that will help me and more in the long run than I can do for myself, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
valuing competition over cooperation.
Yeah.
Ooh, I
That's the
like that.
problem. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Interesting.
And we lose out on meaningful relationships when we're too centered on ourselves. Things like charity, love,
Yeah.
human kindness are all lost when we
Mm.
decide to put ourselves above other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think like we lose the sense of community, we start to think, well, I'm gonna help you just only if it's gonna benefit me. Like before
Yeah.
helping you, I'm gonna think, okay, am I gonna, I don't know, lose something, or actually am I going to I don't know, experience a gain from this? relationship or not. And I
Yeah.
think too many teenagers, like you were saying, are influenced by what people say online. Especially like popular, I don't know, and famous people. Because if they follow, like, I don't know, a singer or something, and they see they have millions of followers, and they say something, they will probably say, "Oh yeah, I think that's smart," just because
Yeah.
this
There's
person said it.
like the three type of arguments, like logos, pathos,
Yeah.
ethos,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and it's all ethos, which
Yes.
exists for a reason, but that's why you've got Beyonce doing Pepsi commercials. But it's like, what does she know about soda? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like what? But we see those people and we think,
Yeah.
oh, they have a following, they must be right.
Yeah.
Mm.
And sometimes that's accurate. Sometimes we think that and it makes sense, but like you're saying, there's a lot of opinions that
Mm.
just because someone with 5 million followers is saying that does not mean that is the best thing to hear,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
And kind of going back to um losing out on relationships because it's not convenient for you.
Yeah.
Mm.
This is gonna sound like maybe hypocritical, but I saw a tweet yesterday or this morning that I wanted to read to you guys. Someone said the phrase to be loved is to be worth the inconvenience. And
Mhm.
so
Wow.
when I don't know if this is gonna bring up like a funny argument that the three of us have sometimes with like me offering rides to you guys.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's funny.
but
No.
but it's because I love you and I care about you. I am happy to be inconvenienced to give you a
Mm.
ride, if that makes
I've
sense.
only had 3,000 steps today.
That's not
I
the
need
point,
to get
though.
more steps.
That's not
why I
the point,
signed up
though.
to get a ride.
But my point is that having relationships is worth any inconvenience
yeah.
that you feel.
I love
Mhm.
And
that.
so when people would rather stay inside scrolling or playing video games or whatever it is with
Yeah.
technology, because they don't want to be inconvenienced. They don't want to be tried for their efforts
Yeah.
or their love or whatever. But like they said, to be loved is to be worth the inconvenience.
Yeah.
And so
Wow, I
when
love
you
that.
love somebody and you're doing something for them, it's not an inconvenience any longer. So it's
Yeah.
not an
Yeah.
inconvenience for me to offer you a ride. You know what I mean?
She's trying to tell us something.
I know, right?
No, but you get my point, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I love that.
Yeah, well, and that kind of makes me think of I don't remember how the quote goes, but it's the one thing about like everything worth it costs something or
Yeah.
you
Like
know the things that are
sacrifices,
worth
yes.
yeah. So yeah, relationships are hard. They take a lot of intentionality. They take some self-reflection, humility, being able and willing to admit that you're wrong, compromising for other people, cooperative efforts. And none of that sounds super fun if you're only thinking about your own gain.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it is a sacrifice, but I think everything worth doing in life is. And so if you say, well, I just don't want to do this because it's hard. Okay, well, you're not going to do anything.
Mhm.
That's how you live a stagnant life
Mhm.
is to reject any type of challenge for the security um of I don't know, I don't even like loneliness, isolation,
Mhm.
selfishness. Yeah. It's heavy.
Mm.
Yeah. And I think it's important to also note that we're not saying that you can't take care of yourself or you can't
Yeah.
like stand up for yourself or put up boundaries, because those are definitely important.
Yeah.
What we're trying to get at is that it's not always like, check whether you're fighting for your wants or fighting for your needs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think there's a big difference between those.
Yeah, and I think there's a difference even I don't know, in ta- take care of yourself and becoming obsessed.
Yeah.
Oh
About
yeah,
yourself.
obsessed
like
with yourself.
like
Yeah.
selfish versus self-care.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think sometimes I struggle with that just because I feel selfish when I'm taking care of
Mhm.
myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's important for teenagers, for anyone at this point, to understand that there is a difference, between self care and what did you say?
Selfishness.
Selfishness. Yes.
Yeah.
I really like that analogy. You guys have probably heard it before. The one about you have to put on your own like mask
Oh,
on the
on
airplane
the
Yeah,
before you can
plane.
help other
yeah.
people. And I think it's a little bit cheesy or maybe overused at this point, but I think it's true. I think it's a good principle that if you're not taking care of yourself, how can you take care of other people?
Yeah.
And not that you only need to be cared for because you care for others, but it's honestly caring for others makes your own experience that much worth it, that much more worth it.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
Savannah and I were in a class together where we were required to do service,
Mhm.
community service. We didn't go to jail, I promise, but it was it was actually really fun. Like I haven't unfortunately I haven't served a whole lot since then, but I did one time, and I thought about my teacher. Like I was like, he
Mm.
would be so happy to know that I'm inspired to do this.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's not really about the people you're serving, because honestly it serves you even more. Just
Oh,
the feeling that I
absolutely.
have when I'm helping someone else, when I'm putting someone else before putting someone's need before my wants, it feels great.
Mhm.
It really does. It's a sacrifice that's healthy. It's not completely overriding your
Yeah.
needs to where
Mhm.
you're like the giving tree, it dies at the end because it gave too much.
Yeah.
It cannot give anymore.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what's the point of that? You know, like
Mm.
we want longevity. We want to
Yeah.
we want a line of service, not just this all of what we have to offer in one little stint. Like we want it's better just a little bit over a longer period of time. But you
Yeah.
can't do that if you're not taking care of yourself.
Absolutely.
So yeah. Okay. And kind of along the lines of that, like why have relationships? Why help people? I found this article that was talking about how older adults were impacted in having lifelong relationships, which of course, you know, we're Gen Z, like we're kind of talking about a younger audience here, but
We are older Gen Z, though. I just want to say.
Yeah, that's true.
Callie's in the middle.
Yeah, yeah,
but
you're in the
Eric and I are a little older Gen Z.
we're wiser Gen Z. Yeah. Yeah, I liked this article because older people are the ones who've had relationships for longer. And so I figured let's learn
Yeah.
from them. And so what they noticed is older adults with larger networks show higher levels of health and well-being in many areas, including executive function and episodic memory, cognitive decline, and allostatic load. So executive functioning, that's just like prefrontal cortex, like your ability to process information. Episodic memory, that's just memory. I think we all get what that is. Cognitive decline, obviously they're saying there's less cognitive decline with more of a social group, a support system. But allostatic load, I was like, what does that mean? And I looked it up, and it's actually the overall burden of chronic stress, like your whole lifetime of chronic stress. And I thought, like, okay, we should probably be addressing that now. Like, you can't go back when you're 70 and undo the stress you had when you were 20. And
Yeah.
so
Mhm.
I thought, well, that's really interesting that these people had less overall stress in their life because they had those support systems. It makes sense, because if you have people who love you, if you're making connections, you're probably going to have help. You're going to have emotional support, all of that. And so I just thought that was really interesting that these older people are so clearly expressing benefits of having a social connection.
Yeah, you actually reminded me of this. I don't know if it's a movie or documentary. It's on Netflix. I think it's called Live to 100 or something like that.
Live to 100?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And it's pretty much talking about the same thing you just shared. They went and they visited these little towns, and they found people of maybe they were like 100, 102 years old.
Oh, yeah.
And they were trying to understand why they lived so long. And actually, they find out that they lived that long because they were close to family members. They had strong relationships with their community, with friends. And this idea of having support in their community really, really helped them to have good health and to live longer.
Yeah.
So I think that research that you study is spot on.
And that reminds me, I like fitness stuff. I like, you know, whatever. And so there's this guy who went to like one of the fittest areas in America.
Hmm.
And I mean, a lot of the video that he made was about like the physical health aspect of it. But he went on this run that the community put on, and that was just all these people gathering to exercise.
Wow.
And like, yeah, let's go for a run. It's, midnight, the nice and cool, let's just go for a run. Yeah, I was like, I wouldn't do that,
Yeah,
but
midnight.
no,
Nope.
no. But that makes me think of what you're
Yeah.
saying is these people weren't just living in their own little homes, living to 100 just because they were buying Whole Foods all the time. Like
Mhm.
Yeah.
there was a social support system. There were people there who wanted to do what they wanted to do. They had the same goals, and they were, I think, keeping each other accountable a little bit too. If you've
Mhm.
got a running partner, if you can't make it, now there's some pressure to do it.
Mhm.
Because like, well, what about, come over, like, come do it with me. Like, that's important. I think
Yeah.
we forget how important it is to have people to share an activity with.
Mhm. I don't think there's ever been a time where I've had an accomplishment and not wanted to share it with somebody,
Hmm.
because another person's love or like congratulations or appreciation for the hard thing that I did like builds me up just as much as the hard thing I did.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I think I don't think I think it's obvious actually
Mhm.
that the benefits of having meaningful and deep relationships far outlast and far
Oh, yeah.
outweigh anything that technology or social media maybe specifically
Yeah.
can really give us in the long run.
Yeah.
So this was great. Thank you guys for sharing your knowledge. I enjoyed our conversation. Today we learned about why relationships matter and what are the challenges, I guess, of our generation to build relationships. We learned about technology and how that's really impacting the way we build relationships, this individualistic approach to
Mhm.
relationships. We also talked about the benefits of long lasting relationships and how that impacts every aspect of our lives.
Well, thanks for listening, everybody. Join us next week for our next episode. We'll be talking about dating. And if you want to learn more, if you want to see more of us, check out our Instagram.
Mhm.
The handle will be in our YouTube in the bio or the description of this YouTube video. Oh my goodness. And we'll also have our website there. Where we'll have all of our resources and some testimonials about from each of us about these topics.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I guess some thoughts before we close, just to get you excited for our next episode.
Heck yeah.
We'll be talking about what does it look like to date with intention? How does this coincide with why relationships matter? So stay tuned and check out our next episode where we'll be talking about all of this and how to avoid falling in love with a jerk. Interesting. That's a book, by the way. Thanks for listening to this episode of Head Over Feels. If you want more resources or information, check out our Instagram and website. Both links in the description of this video. Thanks.